So I'm starting here in my Cognos Analytics portal, and let's have a really quick tour. The recent items that I've been working on are available right at my fingertips here in the main panel. I can also search for things that I might be interested in. For example, the Great Outdoors content that I've been working on. The My content is where I can save my own personal work, and the Team content is where I can share it with my colleagues, and you'll see here all of the items that we'll be using in today's webinar. I've also got access to the recent items that I've been working on. Down here at the bottom, I can quickly create a new report, dashboard, story, data module, or upload some data files. So let's start with our Go Regional Dashboard, where we're doing some analytics around key business questions that we're looking to answer. So is our shift to online sales working? Which regions are performing to plan? How does revenue and gross profit vary? And which sales staff are performing to the best of their ability? So we're nearing the end of Q3, and I've got some key performance indicators here on my highlights. We can see our gross profit, our revenue, our planned revenue. We can also then see the breakdown of quarterly revenue, and I immediately notice this dip here in Q3 for our revenue. Looking at the quarterly quantity, I see the same dip here in the quantity as well, so something of concern that I might want to investigate. But how does that compare across cities? If we have a look at Los Angeles, at Miami and Seattle, it seems that that trend is consistent across the board, so it's something that I want to investigate further. Now it would be good to know what percentage of target we've achieved, so I can simply go from interacting with the dashboard to editing it, and you'll see that the simple transition from interacting with a dashboard or a story or a report to editing it is exactly the same all the way through the capabilities. Now in most cases you want to have all the calculations for your users already available in your data model, but there are always cases when the calculation isn't available or you just want to do something on the fly. So in this particular instance, I want to do my revenue as a percent of planned revenue and display that on my dashboard. I can easily reuse one of these widgets as a starting point so I can maintain all the formatting, and then simply switch out my planned revenue with my new revenue percentage plan here. And I can see that we're 93% to our target. Now I like to bring data to life. It helps me to understand it better and to bring some colour and some pizzazz to our dashboards. So I'm going to add a target over the top. You can use a range of different infographics to add additional insight to your dashboard. Opening up the properties pane on the right hand side, again you'll see across the board, across all of the capabilities, the properties are always going to be in the same place, no matter what the user is using. So let's make the fill colour go from bottom to top, and I'm happy with those changes. So the dashboard is now ready and a bit more complete with that extra target value there in the top right hand corner. Now we noticed a dip in revenue and quantity, so this is something I want to investigate in more detail. So let's have a closer look at our sales versus target. You'll see I've got additional options now to refine this further by city, by order method and individually by quarter. Looking at the revenue versus planned revenue, I can see that Miami is significantly lower than my other areas, but it seems that we're on target. Let's have a look at Miami to see if this is an isolated issue. The map here is showing the integration with Mapbox, which allows us to visualize geospatial data to a much greater level of detail. Now interestingly here for Miami, the revenue is in line with the surrounding area, so it doesn't seem to be an isolated issue to Miami. It's clear that revenue is down quarter on quarter, but perhaps it's a reflection of our shift to online sales. We're aiming for a higher profit margin. Looking at our order method, we can see here that the web, which had been doing particularly well over quarters 1 and quarter 2, have also taken a bit of a hammering here in quarter 3. Let me just change this visualization to make it clearer what the difference has been between the different quarters. And we can immediately see the darker colour here for web, in that we were doing more web sales, more web orders, but that has taken a decline for Q3 as well. So is this shift improving our profit margin, or is it negatively affecting it? Let's investigate that in a little bit more detail. So within our gross profit analysis, we can see how our products have been performing. They're colour-coded here by profit margin. We can see the number of products we're selling over the last 6 quarters, and it's clear that our products have sold fewer numbers during quarter 3. Looking at personal accessories with a declining in the colour shading, we can also see that this has been true across the board. The chart here confirms that our gross profit is also down by the quarter, and our product heat map here by revenue highlights the fact that revenue for temps is doing well, but I'm actually more interested in our bottom 10 least profitable products to get a better understanding of what's going on. So let's have a look at the bottom 10 by our gross profit and see what we can learn from this. So looking here then, we can see that binoculars, eyewear, knives and lanterns had particularly strong performance in Q1 and Q2, but across the board they've been dropping down in Q3. So it seems that that is happening across the board. So it's worth investigating these products across our sales staff, again to see if we can get a better understanding of what's going on. So these are the sales staff responsible for these products. So in the previous tab we noticed issues around eyewear and lanterns for gross profit, some of our best performing products. Now eyewear makes up a significant part of our revenue and planned revenue, so we're going to focus on that specifically. We can now see which sales staff are responsible for this product, but it's hard to see to what extent. That's because this dashboard is partially completed, and what I want to do is to add my planned revenue to make it easier to see and easier to understand how our staff are performing towards plan. Now, I like big, bold words that convey numbers, so let me go ahead and switch this out to a word cloud to enable me to better understand the extent to which our reps are performing towards plan. So we can now visually see who has the highest targets for eyewear. If we have a look at Rolf, so he's pretty much hit his target and he has a margin of 32%. How about Harold? Again, if I was the team manager, this is a great way for me to be able to understand how my team is performing and to be able to compare their performance to each other. Now Harold is interesting because he's nowhere near his target, but he has a margin of 44%. That's very odd. How can our sales staff have such varying profit margins? Let me just check one more. Have a look at Aubert here. So again, he's hit his target and his margin is 33%. Now in the past, cost of goods sold and returns have impacted the profit margin, and I wonder if it's one of those that's causing the issue within our numbers here. So I want to have a closer look at returns and get a better understanding of what's going on. So let me create a new tab for that exploration. It's very quick and intuitive for users to be able to understand the information that they're looking at and to explore their data around the data discovery to get answers to the questions that they're asking. So let's add return quantity. Wow, that's a lot of returns. Let's abbreviate that number to make it big and bold and to stand out more. And actually, because we're talking about returns, let's make it a bit more serious and turn it red. So we were looking at our time frame of 2013, and we were looking specifically for Miami. I want to understand my retailer sites and specifically focus on Miami. You can see as I'm building up these visualizations that the numbers are immediately filtering down to the areas of interest that I'm looking at. So for Miami in 2013, we have 992 returns. Now let's add that return quantity back on again. And actually I want to add my staff name. Let's see how the staff are performing in relation to their return quantities. Again, I want to visualize this slightly differently in a way that is going to be easiest for me to understand. And if I sort that in descending order, we'll be able to see who's top of the pile here. So that's interesting. Fiorenza, who we saw earlier, part of the team, has actually got the most returns, and Aubert is in second place. So again, I'm getting valuable insight into my data simply by exploring the numbers as I'm building up this dashboard. The final thing that I'm interested in is my return reasons. So why are these items being returned? So let me grab both of those, pop them over here in my dashboard. And let's also just change that just to add a little different visual impact for what we're looking at. The last thing I want to add is my products. Let's have a look at our product type, and we want to focus specifically on eyewear. So this is very interesting then. For eyewear, across the board, we have had 782 returns. And interestingly, we can see that the reason description for that is that the wrong product was shipped. Now that's very interesting. If we have a look at who the culprits are, there's 631 returns, and those have been done by Fiorenza, Aubert and Enrico. So I need to better understand why this is happening and maybe put some plans in place to make sure that the returns are going to be lessened over time. So I'm due to present at a board meeting next week, and I want to pull all of these findings together in a nice story so that I can talk through the story of what's been happening within our business. I can pin this content so that I can add it to the story later, or I can also do interaction on the story. So let's come out of the dashboard now and let's open up our story. So as we talked about earlier, stories are a great visual way to share results with a wider audience. They're much better than just plain old PowerPoint. So you can sit back, put your feet up and let the story play through as you talk over the top. So ladies and gentlemen of the board, as a leading outdoor goods retailer, how can we better understand our performance? Which regions are performing to plan? How does revenue and gross profit vary? We want to analyse sales staff, and also is our shift to online sales working? But fundamentally, what can we improve in our business? So we started by analysing our quarterly performance, and we found that overall revenue has remained consistent across most quarters, but both revenue and quantity showed a significant decline in Q3. Miami appeared to be a cause for decline in revenue, however, it is in line with the planned revenue. So perhaps this reflects the shifts to online sales that we've been working on over the last few quarters. We did see that Miami has seen a shift of focus towards web sales compared to a traditional sales visit, so we're pleased about that. But does a decline in revenue mean a drop in profit? So overall, Miami is generating strong revenue when compared with the surrounding areas, so it's not an isolated issue. However, having a look at our gross profit, we confirmed that it has declined heavily during Q3 of 2013. And having a look at our bottom 10 products in terms of profitability, it was eyewear, binoculars, knives and lanterns that dropped in Q3 2013 most significantly. So why then are we seeing a decline in profit across certain products? So eyewear is one of our most important products and contributes to a lot of our revenue. We found that certain sales staff were showing variations in profit margin, and specifically, we wanted to investigate why this was the case. In fact, Roll's profit margin was completely different to Obert's profit margin, which was completely different to Fiorenza's profit margin. So we wanted to better understand what was going on with our reps. And you can see here I've got the same interactive capabilities within the story as I had on the dashboard. Now I could have done the same discovery within the story as I did on the dashboard, but in this particular instance I've pinned the content. You'll see that I've used this pinned content to build up the story. So we found that we had a return quantity of 631 within the Miami region for eyewear. We found that the wrong product was being shipped and that these 3 reps in particular had high return quantities. So the question is, how do we use this information to drive the business forward? So we saw a lower revenue and planned revenue in the Miami region. Our gross profit had dropped in Q3 and we highlighted specific products experiencing the decline. We were able to relate a poor profit margin to specific sales staff and their errors in shipping goods to customers. So our actions then are to investigate the issue with Miami specifically, to solve the possible issue of goods out in terms of understanding why products are being returned, to understand why the wrong products are being shipped, and to provide some additional training for our staff to make sure that those numbers come down. So we've talked through dashboarding and data discovery and pulling that information together as a story. Let's now focus a little bit more on report authoring. So dashboards are great for discovery, stories are great for sharing your findings, but enterprise reporting is also a fundamental part of the Cognos Analytics capabilities. I've got an employee expenses report here that I use on a regular basis. And if I was the manager of Central Europe, for example, it caters to all different levels of the business. As we mentioned earlier, report authoring enables you to do complex multi-page briefing books, prompted reports, bursted reports. It's basically the full power professional report authoring available right at your fingertips, where you need to go to reports you're distributing in PDF, reports that you're scheduling, and things like that. Now this report is also interactive within the viewer. Let's say, for example, I want to get a total by country as well as the overall total. Now I could go back to the report author, or I could just make that change myself, just to get a better understanding of how the expenses relate to the UK specifically, for example. There I've added my own insight into the information. I can see the total for the UK is 7.2 million. And that might be all that I wanted to do to gain additional insight into the report, and as an end user I'm enabled to do that myself. Now if I wanted to change the data that was in the report, again I can easily transition into editing the report. And now I'm looking at basically the report design with a live preview of the data. The items again have changed on the left hand side to enable me to do things related to report authoring. So I've got the data model here, and within report authoring I can add multiple packages to be able to include other data that might not all be in the same model. I've got a great toolbox of items. This really is professional report authoring. For example, if I wanted tables of contents, conditional blocks, if I wanted to add query calculations. So lots of great content for your power report author, but also for an end user who doesn't necessarily need to know half of what these different things do. In fact, as a user, all I want to do within here is add an additional measure to my report because I want to make that available to the rest of my team. I want to add expense quantity year to date, take out my summaries, and there you can see I've got expense quantity unit year to date that's now represented within my report. Now that might be all I want to do. I can then save the report and share it with my colleagues, or I might want to save this as my own particular report view. Easy for the user to be able to do this. Now you'll also notice that now that I'm within the editing mode, I've got more tools right at my fingertips. It's those context-sensitive menus that as a user encourage me to explore more of the capabilities of report authoring, again without overwhelming me with too much content. So there's something for everyone, no matter what level of report authoring you're doing. Now I want to create a brand new report. So let's create a new report that's going to tell me something about my gross profit by product line and order method. So when I create a new report, the first thing I can do is choose how I want my report to be laid out. And I can also choose from some preloaded themes to add a bit of colour and structure to my report. Let me then select what data package I want to use. I'm going to use my Go Sales query. And then again, as an author, I have a wheel of items that I can choose from, which are things that I typically use. I want to add just a visualization to this. And in my visualization gallery, I've got a number of different things to choose from. I've got new visualizations, I've got legacy visualizations that are available to me if you've used those with previous versions of the capabilities, and also the charts from the original Cognos Business Intelligence as well, are all available right at my fingertips. Let me select a 100% bar chart, and I'll just accept these defaults for the object and the query names. Now you'll see I'm now in design mode here. I can easily switch between page design, page preview and page structure. As we saw in the expenses report, when we edited the existing report, we came straight into a live preview. But here I'm working in design mode, so it's easy for me to switch between the different views to use what's most appropriate for what I'm trying to do. So let's add our gross profit into our size, order method type, into our categories, and product line. So whether I'm creating a multi-page book within here, or laying out different pages differently, doing a complex prompted report, you can see how quick and easy it is to get started. Having a look at our page preview, we can carry on working with the design. Give it a quick title there. And I'm simply then going to save that report. Profit work in progress, because I can come back and finish it later. But you can see how quick and easy it is to use the report authoring capabilities, just like we did in the dashboarding. And just in case you're wondering, again, if I've got properties that I want to set, the properties are available in the exact same place that they are in all of the other capabilities, as I've mentioned before. And now I can also subscribe to this report and choose how I want it delivered. So I can choose the days of the week, the time, the format, for example, HTML, PDF, and also the delivery method, whether I want to save it, print it, or send the report by email. I'll get alerts and notifications coming through whenever those reports are available. So the final part of our demo today looks at the modelling capabilities for Cognos Analytics provided to business users through a web browser. Now this is not a replacement for the robust, proven and tested modelling process for enterprise data reporting and analysis, which would still be done using our Framework Manager capability. Instead, it's a simple, intuitive browser-based capability which allows business users to link their own uploaded data to other data, either other uploaded data, enterprise data, other packages, and so on. So here I have a spreadsheet of data of my Irish product specialists. This contains details of how my products are managed by specialists within my Irish team, not based on traditional product line and product type, but based on each team member's experience in managing and selling specific products. And I want to add a bit of friendly team competition between my 4 specialists here. So let's upload this file and bring it into our data model. So I've just added it to my canvas here, or I could add it through the new upload files as we saw earlier. Now it gives me a preview of the data. I can see here my product specialist, the country code, the city, the product line, and the information that I'm interested in. I'm okay with that. Now we can go ahead and use that file. So let's open up our data module and see how easily we can add the spreadsheet of product specialists into this to add additional insight into our data. So what I'm looking at here is the information from my Go Sales data warehouse. You can see I've got various tables represented here already. And looking at the wider Go Sales, you can see there's a lot of tables available to me, only some of which I'm using within here. My order details, I've got things like my quantity, revenue, my measures. So various things that we've been using within our reporting and analytics. I want to add my Irish product specialists file here. So we're going to add a new source, that uploaded file that we've just added. And here's the information from my Irish product specialists. So I simply add that to my data module, and what you'll see is that I've got some indicators here that Cognos Analytics has made available to me. So if we look at the properties, things like the country code and the city, it's immediately recognised as being a geographic location. which is great because when I start to use the data on the dashboard, it will automatically give me a map. Similarly, it's understood various items around my date to do with representing time. So it's a fast start in terms of what you're trying to do. So that file's been added. I can quickly check the information just to verify that it's the right information that I'm looking at. Now I also want to further enhance my data and group my specialists together into teams to get a bit of friendly competition going. In Team A, we're going to have Aidan and Mary, and in Team B, we're going to have Aileen and Sean. Okay, simple. Nice and easy, and let me put that at the top and just have a look to make sure I've got that right. So there's our product specialist group. Team B is Sean. Yep, got that right, fantastic. Now you'll notice that it's kind of hanging out there on its own. The Irish team hasn't been linked in with the US team yet, so it's very easy for me to join information together. I simply need to select the data items that link. So I'm going to take product number from my Irish product specialists and product number from my order details and specify the relationship between them. Now both of my data sources have product number, and the product specialist data source is shown here highlighted in blue, and the order details is shown here highlighted in red, and the column or columns that I have joined them on are shown here represented in blue and red, so it's easy to understand what we're joining on. A nice, easy, intuitive interface for the users to understand what they're looking at. And I can see a sample of the matching rows here. My product specialists potentially are linked to many orders, so I'm simply going to specify that the link between my product specialist and my order details is one product specialist can have many orders. By refreshing the data, I can sanity check what I've done here as well. So that's all I wanted to do, and you can now see that our Irish specialists have been joined in to our data warehouse information. If I wanted to have a better understanding of how these tables relate to each other, I can simply switch on the little cardinality checkbox and understand the relationships between them. So with just a few steps, I've created quite a comprehensive model which I can then continue to use as the foundation for authoring content such as dashboards and reports. Let me save this data module, but before I unleash it on the rest of my team, I want to sanity check that what I've done is correct. I want to try it out first. So the try it launches me into the report authoring environment which we saw earlier and enables me to sanity check my results. So let's have a look at our product specialist group and our product specialist. And I know the numbers that I'm expecting. So the total quantity for my entire team is supposed to be 89,237,091. So I know what the numbers are supposed to be as I come in and I validate my data. So there we can see the quantity, 89,237,091. That's great. I know my data is correct. If I wanted to add additional grouping, I can do that here to further explore Team A and Team B. But I want to visualise this on a dashboard and also see how they're doing in terms of their locations in Ireland to get better insights into my data. So now that I've saved that data module, I can create a dashboard directly from here as well. So there are some things that I want to find the answers to. I'm going to select a different template this time, but you can also see the options for dashboards. I can do infographics, tab dashboards, or single pages, depending on what I'm trying to represent and how I want to share that information. Now I could also be doing this on an iPad or an Android. You can create these dashboards on mobile devices. Let's go for a darker theme here that I think would lend itself better to an iPad. So I want to add revenue, group and specialist to see visually how the groups are doing in terms of revenue. We can see here that Team B seems to be doing better than Team A, and Sean Lowe here is the best performer in the team. Let me just change that visualization to make it super clear, make it easier to understand what's going on in this particular chart. So that gives me a better view of how the teams are performing, and I can see that Aileen is way behind Sean, and then over here in Team A we've got Mary and we've got Aidan. Now I liked that word cloud we created earlier, so I can start with a visualization if I so choose, if I know exactly what I want. I want to better understand how well these 4 specialists are selling our products. So let's add revenue and product type. I might just want to apply some different colouring here to change the palette. So you've got lots of preferences and things that you can set very quickly and very intuitively. That's better. Nice and bright for a rainy day. So let's have a look at what Sean is selling the most of then. So he's selling tents and sleeping bags and that kind of thing. And what about Mary, who's the lead in the Team A? Okay, so she's more focused on eyewear. Yeah, we've had some issues with that. Hopefully she's not returning too many products. But I now want to see how this looks by city. So adding my country code and my city, given the geographic representation icon that we saw earlier, immediately gives me the information as a map. And there we have our map of Ireland. Let's just add our revenue over the top. And in this particular instance, I also want to change the colour palette. I also want to make the numbers stand out more, maybe by changing it to a green colour palette. There's various styles that I can choose from. This is the default, but if I wanted to go down to street level, I'd be able to do that as well. So let me now save this. That's my product specialist dashboard, and come out of my dashboard design mode. So having a look at Cork, we see that this is Mary in Team A, and she's predominantly selling eyewear. And in Waterford, we've got Sean, we've got Aidan, who's focused on woods and irons, and in Galway, we've got Aileen, who's selling predominantly watches with some eyewear as well. So it's a great way to bring additional understanding to geographic-based data within your dashboard. Now we've amended this to street maps. I can focus individually down here all the way down to streets if I so choose with this zoom and pan option. So lots of different options and settings that we have for the map. Now another example that you'll see in the free samples is the storm events. So this brings together not only mapping and the great dashboarding capabilities, but also shows how we can use weather data to get additional insights into our business. So here in this sample, we're looking at storm event analysis, again for the US. We can see property damage and injuries, a number of storm episodes and storm events. If we have a look at property damage more closely, we can see that that's accounted for 364 million, the highest of which has been in Texas, which contributed 135 million to that. How about crop damage? Well, Texas is high up there as well, but actually it's Iowa that has the most crop damage with 4.56 million. Looking at the injuries, again we see big statistics, injuries direct and indirect by state. Maybe not surprisingly that Texas also has the highest number of injuries. When looking at which events cause the most injuries, it's a combination of thunderstorms and high winds across the board. But if we focus specifically on Texas again, we can see that their direct injuries, 14 were from tornado, and their indirect injuries tend to be from the winter weather. So some interesting insights that we can get from combining weather data with our own data and presenting them in a dashboard. So this brings this demo to a close. Let's recap on what we've seen. We've seen how easy and intuitive it is for us to explore our data with the great dashboarding capability. We then brought our findings together in a highly visual, compelling and interactive story. We looked at the report authoring capability with its interactive report viewer and progressive interaction into amending and creating reports. And we finished up with the end user data modelling, where we uploaded a file of Irish product specialists and joined them in with our data warehouse data. And finally, we visualised this data on a dashboard and explored some of the Mapbox capabilities.